So overall, everyone knows the DCAU is great. All the fans embrace the DCAU, all the shows that are within it, except for maybe Zeta Project. I haven't seen it, I can't speak on that. Anyway, a lot of the episodes are highly received, especially in Batman the Animated Series and Justice League Unlimited. But there are some episodes I find to be underrated, so I thought I'd bring some light to this. Also, this video was recommended, this idea was recommended to me by Arcanise. He's been on the channel, you may know him, you may not, I don't know if you've seen videos he's been in, but anyway, go check his channel out because this is a very cool idea. And so this video doesn't run too long, and since there are several episodes you could classify as underrated, I am going to try to keep it to 3 episodes per show. I do have 4 episodes for Batman the Animated Series, but there are a ton of episodes in the series, more than any other series within the DCAU, so I cheated a little and there's just one I could not keep out of this. So, let's go ahead and get into it, starting with Batman the Animated Series. It's never too late. I've spoken about this episode before in a video of my own, and we've spoken about it on the DCAU rewatch, so I don't really need to say too much about this episode. It is extremely dark and emotional, and it's amazing that they got away with an entire episode involving drug addiction in a kid's cartoon. Of course, it's not really a kid's cartoon, but that was the target audience for the studio, not for the producers. It's amazing that they got away with this. It's an amazing episode. It's a deep episode. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. The next episode that I want to mention is the Cape and Cowl Conspiracy. I find that this episode is very hit and miss with fans, or with people in general. My only big complaint about this episode is that it could have easily been a Riddler episode and they did not incorporate the Riddler, which is kind of sad, but other than that, I think this episode is amazing, and especially if you're a kid watching it, the twist, you probably won't see coming. As an adult, yeah, you might see it coming because you can piece certain things together that you wouldn't as a kid because your mind works differently, of course. This next one is another off the beaten path episode of Batman the Animated Series. You've probably noticed that the past 2 haven't had flashy villains like the Joker or Two-Face, and neither does this one. I Am the Night is an extremely emotional episode showcasing the Batman-Gordon relationship perfectly, how much Jim means to Batman, and it really challenges Batman with the question, is being Batman really doing anyone any good, including himself and everyone around him, everyone he cares about? If he continues being Batman, are they just going to get hurt? And I really love seeing the inner struggle with heroes like that. And oftentimes, people do look at Batman as a loner. He's alone, but he's really not. He's always had Alfred, and along the way he found Gordon, he found Robin, he found Dick, he found Tim eventually, not up to this point, but he has Dick, he has Alfred, he has Jim. And Jim, being incapacitated like he is, really puts that in perspective for the audience. Also, he has Leslie, who is also in this episode. Everyone close to Bruce to this point in the show is incorporated in this episode in some way, and it's amazing to see. It's amazing storytelling, and it's just great to see that bond that Batman has with other characters. And the final episode of Batman the Animated Series that I find to be pretty underrated, I don't hear it talked about often, it is one of my favorite episodes of the entire show, and this one does have a bit of a flashy villain in the Riddler, and the episode I'm talking about is Riddler's Reform. Often, this is probably overlooked because of Riddler's introduction episode, If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich? But I think this is the superior episode, and I think it really showcases what the Riddler wants. It really shows that he wants to prove that he is smarter than Batman. He just wants to outsmart Batman. He wants to prove that he is the smartest man in the universe, really. All the riddles in this episode are pretty great. I think they're the best in the show as a whole. I think they are better than the introduction episode of Mr. Edward Nygma, and just a situation that Batman is in and finds a way to get out of is absolutely great, and just what it does to the Riddler not knowing is amazing, because that is the Riddler's thing. If he doesn't know something, it's going to drive him insane, and I love seeing that. Now moving on to Superman the Animated Series. These episodes were a little bit more difficult for me than the Batman the Animated Series episodes, because first of all, I've seen B-Taz more than I've seen S-Taz, but I did pick 3 episodes that I think are often overlooked. They're usually not many episodes of Superman the Animated Series I would consider really underrated, but I think these episodes are somewhat overlooked in the grand scheme of things. So, The first one is My Girl. This is the introduction of Lana Lang, and I just think it's an overall solid episode. The character interactions in it are great. The dynamic between Lana and Clark, and then Lana and Luther's relationship in the episode is really interesting. And this is really one of the first episodes where Lex is really the big bad, other than the introduction episode of the show, the pilot of the show, The Last Son of Krypton, of course. It's really the first episode that Lex is really the villain, the main villain of the episode. And really, Lex isn't even the main villain of Superman the Animated Series, which is what is interesting. Sure, there are more action-packed episodes of the show, but I think the character dynamics and the storytelling in this episode are great. Next episode is Father's Day. I mentioned that Lex isn't really the main villain of Superman the Animated Series because Darkseid is. They really build to this Darkseid invasion arc, and this is the final Darkseid episode before Darkseid actually does invade Earth, and this is the episode where Darkseid first encounters Superman. Now, Darkseid isn't the main villain of this episode, which, if he was, it would probably make it that much better, but I think this is a very enjoyable episode, and Calabac is the main villain, who is just a goonie for Darkseid, really, but it's really interesting to see the New Gods dynamic, the dynamic between Calabac and Darkseid. And it's of course fitting to see that displayed in an episode called Father's Day, because Calabac considers Darkseid his father, and Darkseid doesn't even consider Calabac his son because all he does is disappoint him. But yes, the final encounter with Darkseid and Superman at the end of the episode is fantastic, and it shows how much of a threat Darkseid is going to be in this series. And the final episode of Superman the Animated Series that I picked is a really odd one that I never see get any kind of love. I actually think it may be one of the least favorites amongst the majority of fans, and that episode is Warrior Queen. There's no real story here, and it doesn't tie into, any of the rest of the series, but I do think it's a very enjoyable episode. It's basically just this warrior queen trying to marry Superman because he's the only one that she deems worthy for marriage. And it's just a fun episode. Lobo's in it. This is the only other episode Lobo's in, aside from his introduction episode, The Main Man, which is highly considered as one of the best episodes of Superman the Animated Series. So yeah, I think it's just a fun episode, pretty fun action and fun dialogue. Seeing Superman with Lobo again was cool. Actually, I don't even remember if Lobo is really a staple in this episode or if he shows up at the end. But Lobo is in it, and that's always great. So I just have a blast with this episode for some reason. Now moving on to Batman Beyond. The first episode I've chosen, I don't know if it's necessarily underrated, but I've seen it get some love, but I don't see it get a ton of love like some episodes. So Blackout is the first episode I chose. Ink's introduction episode. Ink is my favorite Batman Beyond villain, and I just think the end scene with Ink fighting Bruce and Terry in the Batcave is amazing, and just seeing all the homages to original Batman the Animated Series, the original Batman villains. You get Mr. Freeze's gun, you see the Joker card, Harley's costume, all that cool stuff. It is overall a great episode. Ink is great in the episode. Terry's great in the episode. Bruce is amazing in the episode. Also, he's wearing the gray ghost uniform. Just a ton of references to BTAS, which is one of the things I love about Batman Beyond. Next episode is Hidden Agenda. This is the introduction of Max, who is very hit and miss with audiences, I find. I don't love her, I don't hate her. I think she's just an okay character. A lot of people do love her, and a lot of people do hate her, so take of that what you will. But Max is not the reason I love this episode, as you can probably tell. But I really enjoy Terminal as a character, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because Michael Rosenbaum voices him, and I love Michael Rosenbaum. Are his motives the strongest? No, but I do think this is one of the coolest Joker gangs we get in the show. Of course, the coolest Joker gang we get in any of the show, anything to do with the show, is Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, but I think this might be the second coolest Joker gang. Then Mind Games. This is an episode that gets overlooked way too often in my opinion. I do think it's one of the best episodes of the show, and it's just about this little girl who has a special talent and can reach out to people through her mind. She's part of the Brain Trust, which is an organization that comes and gets kids with these abilities, and they're faking to be her parents in public, but they obviously aren't. Terry reaches out to her real parents, finds out that they came and got her, and they never saw their kid again. And throughout the whole episode, she's reaching out to Terry because she knows Terry can help. And it's just a really cool concept for an episode. Also, you see Mandragora's son in this episode, so that's an example of backward storytelling within the DCAU. Mandragora, of course, being the villain in the episode of Justice League Unlimited Double Date. Moving into Justice League, now this may have been the most difficult set of choices for me, just because Justice League is very hit or miss with their episodes. Either I love them or I don't really like them. Most of them I do love, especially Season 2 of Justice League. It's maybe the best season in the entire DCAU. Season 1 is very hit or miss, I think. And Season 2, of course, is reflected upon more positively than Season 1. The whole show is reflected upon positively by fans, but Season 2 is definitely the highlight of the original Justice League. With that being said, 2 of these episodes are from Season 1 because it just doesn't get as much love as Season 2 does. So first up is The Enemy Below. Do I really think it's that underrated? Not really, but I do really love this episode, and getting the introduction of this universe's Aquaman, which is maybe my favorite Aquaman in anything. He's really badass, and it's just awesome seeing Aquaman be a badass. Orm was a pretty strong villain. He's one of the best villains from Justice League Season 1, definitely. Also, there is a great scene with Deadshot where the Justice League is chasing him down because Orm paid him to kill Aquaman. So really a lot of firsts in this episode. Introduction of Deadshot, introduction of Orm, introduction of Aquaman, introduction of Atlantis. It is just an overall great episode. Next up, The Brave and the Bold, introduction of Gorilla Grodd. And Gorilla Grodd will of course turn out to be one of the biggest villains in the entire DCAU. He plays a major role in Justice League Unlimited, shows up again in Justice League Season 2, of course in the Secret Society, and of course the Secret Society becomes a much bigger thing, evolves into the Legion of Doom in Season 3 of Justice League Unlimited. I think the thing I really do love most about this episode, though, is it's really a Flash GL buddy cop type episode, and I love Flash's and Green Lantern's dynamic in the show, and I think this may be the best episode showcasing their dynamic, because sadly the episodes that do really focus on that Flash Green Lantern dynamic in the show, in the original Justice League at least, are the lesser episodes. I think this is a pretty middle ground episode, but I do think it's often overlooked because of how great other Justice League episodes are. Also, Batman and Wonder Woman's relationship really starts to evolve in this episode as well, as you see towards the end of Part 2 when Gorilla City is like going down or whatever. But the ending of Grodd faking to actually be brain dead is absolutely great, and this plays a part in one of the best and most funny episodes of Justice League Unlimited, The Great Brain Robbery, because if the end of this episode never happened, then that connection between Flash and Grodd's mind wouldn't be there. Now, an episode of Justice League I truly think is very underrated and often overlooked by mostly everyone is Only a Dream. I think this is one of the best episodes of the show. I know I hold it in much higher regard than most people do, but I absolutely love this episode. And just something that's always been a personal fear of mine is, what if your dreams actually did affect you personally? Like, Dr. Destiny can go into their dreams, trap them in their dreams. That is a scary thought. That's why, like, the concept of Nightmare on Elm Street, it creeps me out because just the thought of your dreams becoming external and actually becoming reality is just a creepy and scary thought, in my opinion. Also, I think the setup of this episode is great in the beginning when Destiny is dreaming, or whatever his original name is. I don't remember the guy's name before he becomes Dr. Destiny. But when he is dreaming, fantasizing about being one of the biggest villains, you see Joker, Lex, and all the big Justice League villains there. Then once he actually does have this power, what he does with it, he is ruthless. I mean, you see murder in this episode, which is pretty brutal for something that's supposed to be a kid's show. Also, you get Hawkgirl set up because of her dream, how Martian Manhunter can't really go in and save her like he did with Flash and Superman. It's giving you hint to Thanagarian capabilities. And also, people may think the song that Batman gets in his mind is stupid, that's what defeats Dr. Destiny, but I absolutely love it. I love that some silly song that is annoying to most people in this universe, apparently, is what keeps him out of Batman's mind. And of course, another thing I absolutely love about this episode is all these superpowered heroes are shut down by Dr. Destiny, and the one man that can put a stop to it, the one man that stops Dr. Destiny, is human, is Batman, because Batman doesn't sleep. That's why you see him sleeping at the end of the episode. But anyway, I absolutely love this episode. If you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a while, or you just remember not liking this episode, check it out again. I highly recommend it. Now on to the final show, Justice League Unlimited. First off, Initiation, the very first episode of the show. It's pretty hard picking underrated episodes of Justice League Unlimited because most of the episodes are absolutely great and they're received as absolutely great and get all the high praise they deserve. But I think the first episode is overlooked sometimes. Now, there's nothing super memorable about this episode outside the opening scene with the original 7 members of the Justice League recruiting Green Lantern, and he gets to the Watchtower, and it's filled. It's not just the original 7. It is basically every hero in the DC universe almost. And the interactions between Green Arrow and Batman are absolutely great. Green Arrow saying, hey, I protect the little guy, I don't need to be involved in this, and then Batman basically responding by saying, all these larger threats, they do threaten the little guy. They threaten everyone, especially the little guy, so he really puts that in perspective for Green Arrow, and I love that because Batman is of course going to be the character that Green Arrow can relate the most to, that was in and is in a similar situation to that of Green Arrow. No powers around all these superpowered beings taking on these greater threats. Next is Dead Reckoning. Now, is Grodd's plan dumb? Yes. Is it meant to be dumb? Yes, for the purpose of the episode, yes. This is the episode where Lex Luthor takes over the Legion of Doom from Gorilla Grodd, something we have been waiting for since the beginning of Season 3. Lex is finally in charge. Lex is the main villain again, even though he always was the main villain. He's basically the main villain all the way through Justice League Unlimited. Deadman's incorporation in this episode is pretty good. I really enjoy it. I like when Deadman takes over Superman's body, and Superman is like, how did we get to Gorilla City, or how did we get to Africa? It was a really funny moment, one of the funniest moments in the entire DCAU, in my opinion. And then when Deadman goes into Batman's body and kills Devil Ray and gets out, Batman comes to the realization that he pulled the trigger to a gun, killed someone. It's heartbreaking. Batman's broken. Like, he didn't do it, but he did it. He didn't do it, but he held a gun. He was holding a gun once Deadman came out of his body. Heartbreaking. And finally, the final episode, final underrated episode of the DCAU I have is Patriot Act. Now, this isn't an all-time favorite or anything, but I do think it's a great episode to showcase that Superman, or someone like Superman, all the bigger heroes, all the heroes with the greater powers, or even like a Batman who is well established, they can't always be there to protect you. They can't always be everywhere. They can't be everywhere. So seeing these lesser heroes, like Green Arrow, who is not a lesser hero at this point, and Stargirl, who is about to not be a lesser hero, you know, they're becoming more well known, but back in 2006, they were lesser heroes. They weren't on Superman's level, on Batman's level, on Wonder Woman's level. And to a power extent, they still aren't. But it's just fun to see more. It's just fun to see lesser used characters incorporated in an episode like this, and to see them actually save the day, and to be recognized for that as heroes like Superman. So yeah, those are the episodes that I think are the most underrated in the DCAU from the 5 most popular DCAU shows, the 5 biggest DCAU shows. Let me know what episodes you think are underrated down in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.